Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hari Hari Bol. So thank you very much for coming tonight to our weekly Krishna Fest. And tonight I chose a topic that is central to our understanding of Krishna consciousness and the whole philosophy and practice of Krishna consciousness. And let me just set this up. Okay. Sorry. Today at the Sunday Feast Krishna Fest in San Diego on March 19th, we're speaking on the topic of shreyas and preyas and sangha. Those three are central to understanding not just Krishna consciousness, but our whole existence in this material world. And so I'll read a little bit from purport that Srila Prabhupada wrote to his Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 9 of the Adi Lila, text 42. This is a little excerpt. There are two kinds of general activities: shreyas, or activities which are ultimately beneficial and auspicious, and preyas, or those which are immediately beneficial and auspicious. For example, children are fond of playing. They do not want to go to school to receive an education, and they think that to play all day and night and enjoy with their friends is the aim of life. This is an example of preyas, or immediately beneficial activities. But there are also shreyas, or activities which are ultimately auspicious. According to Vedic civilization, a human being must be God-conscious. He should understand who he is, who God is, what this material world is, and what their interrelationships are. This is called shreyas, or ultimately auspicious activity. And then as far as sangha goes, I have a quote from a famous verse from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There's the phrase, Sangat Sanjayate Kama, in text number 62, I believe, in the second chapter. And Prabhupada explains this phrase, Sangat Sanjayate Kama, in his Nectar of Instruction, verse 4, purport. One's desires, kama, and ambitions are developed according to the company one keeps. Now, this is not a revolutionary idea. Every mother and father know that they're very concerned who their child is hanging out with, right? Because they don't want them to get into bad company and develop bad habits or whatever, right? So that's a principle I think is understood. but it pervades everything, and it's very important to understand in Krishna consciousness. So I'm going to go back to shreyas and preyas, and to explore those two concepts in the context of Krishna conscious activity, or bhakti-yoga, which is what we practice here, is given by Srila Prabhupada. Om jnana-timirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshu unmidatam mena tasmai Shri Gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So we may not call it, we probably don't, by these two words, but these concepts of immediate benefit and ultimate benefit they're well known in our life, even if we don't know the names for them. And Prabhupada gives a perfect example here. And he told how he himself was very against going to school when he grew up. When it came time, he was adamant that he wanted to play. And he said that if it wasn't for his mother, his father, who would always yield to him in many ways, he would have never gone to school. So his mother said, no, you must go to school. And of course, children who are healthy and they like to play, the first day of school is always a big surrender, isn't it? Suddenly they're under control, it's a strange person, it's a little traumatic, if you recall. So what does that mean? It means that a child's mentality is not developed. And if he's getting pleasure out of playing with his friends and doing whatever, then why stop it? That's what's giving me pleasure. That's what I like to do. That's what I want to do. But the parents know that for the ultimate benefit of the child, maybe he needs to get an education, even though that requires, the first to surrender is to be quiet for a length of time, to listen to the teacher, all the things that happen when you go to school. And why? Because ultimately, of course, the child is identifying with himself as a child. This is who I am. Right? And he has a certain field of activities and understanding, and he play games, his friends and so forth is having a wonderful time. Why stop it? This is what I like to do. This is good. But the higher intelligence and the experience of the parents know that it'll be disastrous if you don't go to school. You'll suffer much later, you see. And so this principle is there also in spiritual life. The question is, what is the ultimate good that we can achieve? And because here Prabhupada gives the example of the education. But even if you get the best education, and you get a PhD, and you graduate and you get a good job, and whatever it is, that's not the ultimate good. Why? Because it doesn't really address the question of who you are. And who is really the ultimate, the person who will either enjoy or suffer. And this is why the first lesson always in Krishna consciousness begins in Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna begins his teachings to Arjuna in the second chapter, it addresses the question of Arjuna. What is that? Ashochanam ashochastram pragyabharan shabhasase. You're speaking these learned words. The context of the Bhagavad Gita, it's a very fraught situation on the battlefield, right? Arjuna is the student, and Krishna is the teacher. But Arjuna, they're on a battlefield, and they're fighting a war, about to fight a battle, and a war for the ultimate rule of the earth. And this is very, very significant. Krishna has come to the earth for his, as he says in the 4th chapter, in order to reestablish dharma when it becomes confused. Yadaya dahi dharmasya glani bhavati bharata abhyudanam adharmasya tadatmanam sajamyaham. I think, isn't it true that most Indians learn this verse as children? I've never found one that didn't know it. So it's a critical verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Why should God come to this earth? Why did Krishna come? Whenever and wherever there are discrepancies in dharma, in real religion, then I come in order to reinstate dharma, and to protect the devotees who are propagating dharma, and to annihilate the miscreants. Now, he's made it very clear before this, no one dies. No one dies. Forget about death. We're not going to die. We live forever. And we're always alive. Now, this is good news, isn't it? It's good news if we know how to act in this life, so that we can really realize our eternal life and our eternal nature, which is to be always blissful and to be full of knowledge. But generally, in the material world, people don't act that way, right? We live on the basis of a false identity, this body. And it's quite natural. What do we know? You know, we're conditioned souls at this point. We're born into a certain family, a certain country, a certain language, everything. And from childhood, we're trained to identify with that. So Krishna consciousness means to first, who are we actually? Who are we actually? Sanatana Goswami, great first disciple of Lord Chaitanya, epitomized the mood in which we should approach someone in knowledge, the acharya, the preceptor, the guru, spiritual master. Is it Kayami Kenayamai Jaritapatrai? This is a question we should all ask. Who am I? Why am I suffering in this world? Why is there threat of suffering and there's real suffering? Is it inevitable? Is it? So that question can't be answered by mundane knowledge. You can't go to the university and answer that. Who are you? Well, we have your file here. Your name is such and such. You're so old. You got good marks on your SATs. No, that's not who you are. All of that is superficial because it pertains to the body, the external body. So there's the body, the physical body, and the subtle body, the mind. This is also not us. But the soul, the Atma, is who we are. And we need to know what is the course for the best destination or destiny of the soul. How can we as soul achieve the highest happiness and the greatest knowledge and the greatest peace? That should be our question. Otherwise, we'll say, well, how can I, in this bodily identification, achieve happiness and peace? And the answer is, you can't. You can achieve some for some time, but there's always the threat that it will end, because it's temporary. This is the whole thing. Bhavasagara, the ocean of change. That's literally what it means. And it's come to me in the ocean of the big changes that make it impossible to be happy. Birth, old age, disease, and death. Who's going to say, oh, they don't bother me. I'm not going to have to worry about that. Every one of us. No one can raise his hand. No, that's not true. You have a choice. You can die prematurely, or you can die in grand old age. Big deal, you know. Either hanging or the electric chair. What would you like? You know. The point is, it's inevitable. And so there is no ultimate happiness or peace or success on this plane, in this identity. But there is an art and a science of how we can act in this lifetime for our ultimate benefit, nikshreyasa, ultimate shreyasa, so we don't have to come back again. We can be reinstated in our original spiritual identity. Now all this is a mystery because we can't see this or understand it with our present state of consciousness. And so therefore, we come to the point of sangha. Sangha sanjayate kama. Now sangha is an interesting word because it means two things. Oftentimes you'll find that in Sanskrit. I find it very fascinating. The word gati. Gati normally means a goal, right? It means a goal. But it also means the means to the goal. You see? So sangha means association, but it also means the result of association, which is attachment. Now there's wholesome attachment and there's detrimental attachment. If we become attached, just as an extreme example, because this is how you can really understand the best. Everyone in this room knows that there's a certain percentage of people in every society, especially Western society, I guess, who become addicted to harmful substances. Alcohol is the most common all over the world, and it's been around since forever, right? So there may be some pleasure when you first take it, and you know, and so forth. Obviously, it does something for you. But if you take too much and you continue that way, then you become an alcoholic, which is tremendously detrimental to your physical body and your consciousness also. Your brain, it's poison. That's why it's called intoxication, toxic. So why take it? Because when you got into it, your friends invited you, and it was a lot of fun at first, you know, and everything. And then you got a monkey on your back, we used to call it in New York when I grew up, you know. It's overtaken your mind, your will. You know, you have to, the only hope is to go to, you know, get help from friends, be put in an environment. AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, there's one, the big one up the street here. I don't attend regularly, don't worry about it. It's interesting, we had a friend, this is some years ago now, and somebody from there heard, you know, was curious. He came down and he started coming regularly. And he said, you know, there's a lot of similar things between AA and what you guys do. And what he was saying, first of all, is association. It's like, why do we need a temple? So we can come together and help each other be Krishna conscious, right? It would be, it's not as fun chanting Hare Krishna at home. I mean, it's nice you have your family, or maybe you do it alone. You come to the temple, and there's festivals. Hopefully we can have a Rath Yatra again. You know, they're not having the big, you know, Earth Day anymore in the park. So that was our venue. But it's so wonderful to be with other devotees. This was Lord Chaitanya's great gift. Sankirtan, the last verse of the Bhagavatam, begins with the word Yatra Sankirtanam Yasya Sarva Papa Muchite. Is that by he whose name, the Sankirtan, congregational chanting of whose name, destroys all sin. I bow down to him. That's half of the verse. That's to Krishna. So what we do in congregation with others, this is really what forms our consciousness most powerfully. So that can be good or bad. So understanding, first of all, who we are, who we are, and how can we, as soul, as spirits who will live forever, achieve our greatest good. Means happiness, peace, success. You see, or otherwise, it's various degrees of preyas. It may look like shreyas. Well, I'm a very responsible person. I'm not addicted to any drug. You know, I studied very hard. I got a good job. Fine. You know, that's a relatively good material life. But it's ultimately doomed by the force of time and by forces beyond our control. I mean, is anyone in this room not aware of climate change and the troubles that's bringing? I've been living here for 33 years in San Diego. The climate has changed. I mean, I've also changed. Do we ever have a winter where it's so cold day after day after day? I don't remember it like that. Plus all of this rain. You know, rain is good in moderation, but up north, you know, floods everywhere. So what is that? That is called adidaivik miseries. They're beyond our control. All of them are beyond our control. But eventually, one of them will get you. The adi-atmic misery, which is your own body and mind. We've all suffered something like that, and there's disease that happens that you have to, you know, but they overlap. Is climate change an adidaivik misery? These incredible storms that we're having, say, tornadoes everywhere. Well, yeah, I mean, that's adidaivik, right? That's like from the gods. Yeah, but what about all of that great greenhouse gas that human beings are pouring in? Doesn't that have an effect? So that's adibautic, isn't it? So one way or another, this is the nature of this material world. What's that verse, that line in Gita? We could all say it together. Dukkhalayam ashashritam. This is Krishna certified this, that this world is full of miseries, dukkhalayam, and it's temporary. Means that, okay, even if you get a kind of a nice space where things are going okay, be patient. It'll end. It's temporary. So that temporariness itself is a negative aspect of this world, isn't it? So this is why getting too absorbed in preyas or in false shreyas, meaning that, okay, you know, I'm planning ahead in the next 10, 20 years. Yeah, but how about planning next for the 10, 20, 40, 100, 200 years? Well, I don't have to worry about that. I'll be dead. You won't be dead. Nobody dies. So in Krishna consciousness, we learn. Now we can't see this with our normal eyes and ears to understand life beyond death, transmigration of the soul. What to speak of God? Is there a God? Well, I don't see him. You know, must be just some mental concoction. No, because you don't have the refined consciousness to see. But that's what Srila Prabhupada came to give. What all the great acharyas come to give, is that don't simply make conclusions about your life on your present limited mind and senses. There are individuals who have refined vision and have revelation that can give us knowledge beyond the reach of the senses. That's beginning with Bhagavad Gita. The very title is a challenge. The song of God. So if you don't believe in God, what's the point of reading? You see, that was a curiosity. The first Gita I read was definitely written by someone who didn't believe in God. It was just a translation, and there was no. And after reading it, I had no idea what I was supposed to do. That I even supposed to do something. In other words, it's a normative book. It's meant to say, oh, now I see what I should do for my ultimate benefit, and I'll do it. I mean, Krishna says at the end is very, very plain. There's 2 verses. I put them into a little poem that kind of condense the whole message of the Gita in terms of what we should do. Krishna says, those who know it can repeat with me. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mame vaishasi satyam te padijane priyosi me. Just think of me, become devoted, worship me, and bow down low. You'll come to me, O friend. I promise you this boon I shall bestow. And then the next verse, even more famous, Sarva dharmam padityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam savapapebhyo mokshiyasyami ma shuchaha. Just give up all other dharmas and surrender only unto me. Your sins I'll nullify, O Arjun. From anxiety be free. So this Krishna is offering this to all of us. But we need to study and practice and believe and associate. And that's where the Sangha comes in. Just like you've come here, you've all taken the trouble to come here. So why? Because you want some Sangha. This is the famous Satsang, right? Which is short for Sadhu Sangha. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's one section, and I'll just give a real summary because many of you have heard it before. This is in the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev, who's an incarnation of Krishna in the 3rd canto, beginning in chapter 25. So this is right near the beginning of his instruction, and he's instructing his mother. He's teaching his mother the science of bhakti. And he himself is an incarnation of Krishna. So he starts out like this, prasangam. Notice the word sangha. Now pra, the prefix intensifies, means intense, meaningful sangha. Prasangam majadam pasham atmana kabayo vidu sahesha sadashukato moksha dvaram apavatam. This is the first verse in this Sadhu Sangashlika. 8 verses about Sangha, Satsanga, Sadhu Sangha. So in this case, the prefix pra means very strong, attachment. Remember, it means 2 things, association and attachment. From association comes attachment. So here, the affection or attraction for, what is it? Prasangam Majaram Pasham. Yes. Attraction for the material, I forget the poem, but it means attraction for the material keeps us bound to this material world. But getting attraction and association with sadhus opens wide the doors to liberation. This is the idea. And I always point out, you don't have to stop here when you came to the temple. You go down like 50 feet, and you can go to the little bar, pizza bar down the corner here. So you made a decision. No, we'll go to the temple this time. It makes a world of difference, right? You can go to the bar and associate there, and many people wouldn't dream of coming in here. They say we wouldn't dream of going in there because we know this is a wholesome association, beneficial. So what you choose to associate with, and not just once a week or even once a day, but at every moment, you're choosing what to see, hear, and think about, and how you're going to develop those attachments. So that is the key element. I mean, the whole practice of just like we chant the holy name. We know that's the dharma of the age, right? Chanting Hare Krishna, and I think everyone here has experienced the benefits of it and the power of chanting. This whole building, this whole movement started with that. It's built on that. How did Prabhupada start his movement? He had no money, he had no people, he had no place. How do you start a movement like that? He went out and he found, he was able to get some shelter, uptown with the impersonalist yogi, okay, fine. And as much as possible, he chanted Hare Krishna. And because he knew the power of that chanting, especially pure chanting. And some people were attracted to hear more. And eventually went downtown. I used to live in New York City, and I know the difference between uptown and downtown. And especially at that time, which is right in the, I always thought Krishna just brought Prabhupada to America at just that time when the hippie era was happening. Now, it's hard to understand what was going on at the time, but a certain number of young people were experimenting. Now, it's true that drugs were central to it, especially LSD. And LSD wasn't an ordinary intoxicant. It kind of affected your mind in such that you became thought that you were perceiving God or something transcendental. It kind of shook you up, your sense of reality. I mean, if many took it and they never came back. It's not a wholesome thing to do, but it happened at that time, and there were a certain number of people, you may even know their names. You read the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. It's a wonderful book. It's a nice summary, one volume. And there were a certain percentage who came and saw Prabhupada. They could understand he is the real thing, and they took to the chanting and the prasadam. You didn't have to really convince them. He was a great cook. He knew the power of prasadam. And before long, the temple was filled, And people chanted, okay, we'll chant first and then we'll eat, But they chanted and they said, that was something interesting, and read the book, and then hear Prabhupada speak. So anyway, the seed was planted, and the tree of ISKCON began to grow, just on the basis of the power of Srila Prabhupada's preaching, his words, his association, and the chanting of Hare Krishna. And those elements are always there. And especially in the books, Srila Prabhupada's books, because as he famously said, there's two kinds of association, sangha. One is personal association, as we know, and one is through the words. You can associate through words also. Vani, words, and vapu means body, through association. So certainly, whenever possible, we should get personal association with the great souls. Srila Prabhupada is unique, but there's great souls now. And what is the most important way, even at that point? Hearing them, hearing from them. What is the Bhagavad Gita? It's a conversation, right, between God and His main disciple. What is the Bhagavatam? A series of conversations, one within the other. First, the second line of the Bhagavatam is Tene Brahmavadaya Adikavaye, is that it's not exactly a conversation, but Brahma is associating with Krishna. He's being enlightened from within the heart, because he was the only person around, But he got Krishna's association in the most important way. And then he passed that on by teaching Narada Muni. Narada Muni taught Vyasadeva taught his disciple Shukadev. And Shukadev spoke the Bhagavatam in the assembly of the sages, and then later on Sutta heard it and he spoke it, and then it's been recorded by in the Sanskrit, and it's come down to us. And throughout the Bhagavatam, you'll find, like I spoke about Kapila Dev speaking to his mother. It's all conversations, one with another, and so we have a great opportunity to hear, to read, to hear, and to be privy to those conversations and those conclusions. And so what is the conclusion is? The Sangat Sanjayate Kama, to direct our association in such a way so we can actually achieve our ultimate shreyas, our ultimate good. And what is that ultimate shreyas? So there's one verse I'd like to share with you, which you may have heard me chant before, but it deals with this very point and the urgency of it, because time is passing. We don't know how many minutes and hours and days and years we have. So in the 11th canto, I think Krishna speaks this verse, Labdva sudurlamamidam bahusambhavante manusham artadam anityam apiya dira turnam yateta napateda namityayavat nikshayasaya vishaya kalusarvataksya. Notice that word shreyas. Nikshaya means ultimate good. So this is a call to human beings. It's just like that call, Tamasi ma jyoti ugama, don't stay in darkness, come to the light, right? Everyone knows that one, and the rest of them. And so it says, you have attained this rare human form of life after many, many births. Sudurlamavidam bahusambhavante. Manusham, human being. Now you're a human being. Manusham. And what's the great value? Artadam. Now this word arta, when applied in this context, is the same as shreyas. It means the ultimate good, the ultimate goal of life. Only in human life can you achieve it. There's so many other forms of life. You know, I take a walk every day and I see human beings in relation with the dogs. There's so many people walking their dogs. Okay, fine, you know, but we can become a dog. They can exchange places next birth. It happens. So, but we've been through that. You know, the trees that we've been through, we don't remember. You know, remember, we never die and we were never born, really. Jayate Mayate Bhakadash, we've existed as souls since time immemorial in different forms. So now we've come to this precious, invaluable human form. So what does Krishna say here? So Manusham Artadam gives the ultimate goal, the ultimate value, shreyas, Artadam, but it's anityam. It's temporary. Time is passing. Every second counts. That's it. Apiya dhira. So one has to be very sober-minded and consider these points. Don't let the senses take over and be distracted. Consider these ultimate questions. And so what is the conclusion? It says, Turnam. Immediately, don't waste time. Turnam yateta, strive. Turnam yatetam anumutya yava. Turnam yatete anumutya yava. As long as you haven't died yet, which is everyone here, nikshayasaya. Strive for the ultimate good. Because after all, in all these other forms of life, vishaya kalasarvataksya. Vishaya means sense gratification, means preyas, means ultimate pleasures, or a little deferred, pleasures of the mind, you know, fine poetry. It's all in the same category. It may be a different mode of nature, but vishaya kalasarvataksya. In all these other forms we've been in, and all the human forms we've been in, we've tasted all these different varieties of sense gratification. But here we still are, bound up in the material world, facing old age, disease, and death. In other words, we didn't really go along the path. We've wasted that time. But let's not waste this human life. Now we have a chance. It's a special junction where we can consider these. Who am I? Why am I suffering? How can I mitigate all suffering? Is there a God or not? These are the questions we should answer. What is that? A Tato Brahma Jigyasa, the very first sutra of the Brahma Sutra, Vedanta Sutra says, now then, therefore. How do you begin a book with the word therefore? Well, the implication is, therefore, having come to the human form of life, you should inquire into Brahman, the absolute truth. Krishna is Parabrahman. Where did everything come from? That's the next sutra. What's the source of everything? Who's maintaining it? You know? So that question can be answered from the Shastra, from the revealed scripture, which is basically the words of the great sages who have realized it. And so that association, through personally or through their words, media, there's so many media, you know. Your destiny is really determined today, right? Which buttons you push on your phone or on your computer, which sites you visit, isn't it? One will take you to a dark place and one will take you to the ultimate light. There's so many nice sites, you know, wonderful kirtans online. It's you know, there's something called the ISKCON Desire Tree. Is everyone aware of that? It's a site. Audio from all, you know, so many Srila Prabhupada's lectures are there, and so many other things. That's just one part of it. So the whole question is, how do we choose? On what criteria do we choose? And the instructions of the acharyas and the great sages in the books will encourage you to choose in this way, even though it may be not so much pleasing to your immediate senses. And this is why the necessity for what's called tapasya, or austerity. It's true on material level too. You know, how do these athletes become champions? Tremendous austerity. So many try and fail. It's too hard. They give it up, or they're not suited to it. Or a musician, or any other thing you want to. You think there's no austerity there? I used to play musical instruments, and when I first started playing, I was just a kid. It was a great austerity for my parents to listen to the sounds I was making. But after a while, you get good, and okay, Tom is playing the recorder. It sounds pretty good. Mozart, whatever, But it's a minor austerity. But everything requires austerity if you want to achieve a good job or a good degree or anything. So austerity we're familiar with, but the tapo, this Rishabde's verse, tapo divyam. This is a spiritual austerity, that austerity which moves you along the path toward purity. And so he says, tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shudyed, of sons. He's speaking to his sons. He had 100 sons, and he's about to take sannyas. Means that he's going to leave the family and go traveling. So he's giving them a final instruction. So he says, dear sons, I put it into a little poem. This one I think I can remember. Don't waste this precious human life, O friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through bhakti-yoga, worldly life transcend and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss. So this is the choice we have. We can try to enjoy, as we have enjoyed through millions of births, the flickering pleasures of the mind and the senses. Or we can perform austerity and control the senses and use those very same senses to connect to Krishna, to Bhakti Yoga, the ears and the million things we can hear, but if we hear Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So much benefit. Sometimes it's nice just to hear the benefits of chanting. There's so many wonderful verses. Just one name. One name. It's so potent. You've just eradicated millions of lives of sinful reactions. We don't know. This is, all of that is in our Akashic record, whatever you want to call it, and is all determining our fate. But not as soon as we start chanting. What to speak of chanting systematically? It's not so difficult. This is Lord Chaitanya's great gift. The benefit is enormous. The cost is zero. Isn't that a good investment? Invest, time to chant. Okay, start with 2 rounds a day. I started with 2 rounds a day, and read and become convinced. You become convinced by direct experience. So this verse, don't waste time. Turnamitaita means immediately strive. We don't know how much time. And practice the austerity of which is not so great. The austerity, okay. This is probably the biggest austerity you're going to perform tonight, to listen to me. And I apologize. It'll be over soon. But then comes the austerity of a little kirtan and the feast, and that can be the big austerity. That was like that's just part of Prabhupada's genius, and it works, and it's true. That the food before, which is prepared with devotion in the proper way and offered to Krishna, it's delightful on the material level, but it's really very, very wonderful on the spiritual level. It purifies and attracts you to Krishna. So this is, just to sum up a little bit, I don't want to berate you anymore, and that is that be aware, of the shreyas and preyas distinction, and that the ultimate shreya, the ultimate good, is, simply put, to go home, back to Godhead. And what's the benefits? No more birth, no more death, no more, I'm not going to say it, the last president, no more of this craziness of leaders who are just taking us off a cliff. This is such a contrast to the great kings, Yudhishthira, who was so troubled at the end of the war. His whole concern was just with the benefit of the praja, and so many animals had been killed. He was crestfallen. And and Bhishma Dev, who's lying on he could die at his will, so he's lying on a bed of arrows, and he took time, it was quite a bit of time, in instructing Yudhishthira. It was an incredible scene. And so the examples of kings like Lord Ram, their whole concern is for the benefit of the people, not to somehow fool everyone and make so much corruption. It's horrible. So we don't have to. We can do the ideal is to work hard to become realized, self-realized, God-realized, which is possible. The process is here, and to help as many others as possible to also take the knowledge and the practice. And that's the most pleasing thing to Krishna. They go together, actually. And that's the measure of a real successful life. If you can, as far as possible, understand this science and practice it, it's practical. Anyone can do it. Not impossible. And at the same time, anyone who you influence who is associating with you, then they can also benefit by you taking the trouble to encourage them. Yes, read the books and come to the temple. We have a Gita class every night. We've had it for over 30 years now. It's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And that's because I give the Gita class. I may not give the Gita class, but hopefully it'll happen even when I'm not around. At 7:15. And it's on YouTube. You can watch. And if you're really into it, you can get on Zoom. And you can ask questions. And make comments even. You know? So, so that's going on. Then Thursday night, we have this Krishna Lounge. It's a little less formal. You know, vegan, free. And chanting, little talk. And nice discussion and vegan feast. It's been going on for years now, 10 years. And now there's a new one if you live in the south, down in Chula Vista. So anyway, we have these programs, and it's just for everyone. Again, there's no fee. And the deities are there, beautiful Radha Giridhari. This is the 50th anniversary year of their installation. And we're going to have 2 beautiful flower festivals for them. I remember the first one we did, I just said, this is the best festival I've ever seen. This was some years ago, they did. And everybody was happy, just, you know, there was the pujaris on the altar there, and they were throwing flowers, and they were back up to their waist in flower petals. Wow, that's amazing, you know. Then they took the flower petals, threw them out into the audience, and everyone was and you know, what was the cost? Nobody was taking any intoxicants, you know. Nobody was, but everyone was blissful. Why? Because it was very pleasing to Krishna, and everyone got it. So this is a real life, and in the spiritual world, that's what's going on. It's all play, all lila. Lila means you don't have to do it, you want to do it, right? Because it's fun, and that's what real life is ultimately. Not this, you know, hard struggle for existence, and ultimately, you know, defeat, and then who knows, you know. It's not. This is the illusory world. It's not the place of happiness or peace, but it's a world that's arranged in such a way that we can use the facilities of our own body and mind and everything for connecting to Krishna and helping others to become successful in life. That was part. What is that phrase? Maybe some of you can help me. Sarve sukhino bhavantu. Do I have that correct? May everyone be happy. Right? Isn't that? It's a wonderful. Indian, but how can everyone be happy? By kirtan. Just join in the kirtan and cooperate with each other to glorify Krishna. So, any discussion on any of these points? Shreyas, Preyas, and Sangha. Guru Krishna Prabhu.
Sometimes I run into people, they say, well, you know, it seems to be like a big commitment, the whole spiritual path, you know. What if I take that path, but, you know, I don't get to live the life I have right now? You know, sometimes they you know, I've got this life I'm living, I don't want to give it up to do something spiritual. You know, it's kind of like a all or nothing kind of thing. So what do you say to people like that to convince them to, you know?
I would say take whatever you can. You don't have to. You don't have to radically change what you're doing. You know, Prabhupada was ready. You know, he said, it doesn't matter. You know, you may be breaking all of the 4 regular principles, but chant Hare Krishna. You just come in and help us. You know, and you join the chanting, and then after you get a little tired, take this. It's very delicious. You know, I mean, that's how you start. You start with whatever you can, and it's important to come to the point of at least being curious enough to read a book. Like one of the, you know, nice. There's so many books that have come out. One of them is Coming Back. It's not entirely written by Prabhupada, you know, but it's all based on his teachings and like that. And it explains the science of transmigration. Which is people are interested in that even if they're not, you know, just on a general basis. So there's that, or, you know, some of the small books. Take it at your own speed. You don't have to do anything radical. It reminds me when Lord Chaitanya was traveling in South India. He came to this one place. His name was Kurma Brahman, and he was really impressed with Lord Chaitanya. He said, "I want to go with you." He had children and a house and a wife and a job and everything. And I said, no, you stay where you are, you know. Yar dekatayat Krishna Upadesh, Amara Gaya Desh. He said, whoever you meet, you tell them about Krishna, you know? And on my order, in this way, you become a guru and deliver this land. In other words, Lord Chaitanya wasn't in the thing of like trying to gather a following as he's going and gradually have thousands and 100,000 people walking with him in the forest. That wasn't the idea. Is that he would inspire people to take up, and they would stay where they are. Of course, there's a way, you know, when you understand how you can live a pure life even in householder life. That's not. Most of Lord Chaitanya's followers, especially in Navadvipa, are householders. You know, with Srivas Thakur and Vaidacharya, eventually Nityananda also. You know, he had children. So that's not a disqualification. But what is necessary is to associate, to at least associate with the devotees, and also, really important at a certain point, to read, to be curious and read about it. That's not a radical thing. You know, naturally you come to the point of say, yeah, I don't really need this in my life. This is harmful, you know. And then if you're chanting, you'll have the spiritual strength to give it up. You'll get the spiritual strength. So it's a gradual process. I mean, when I joined, when most of us joined, we didn't just like immediately read the book and move in. There were some who did that. You know, fortunate souls. Oh, this is it. I read the whole Bhagavad Gita in 3 nights. I know several devotees. Vijay is one of them. And then look for a temple. He was chanting. He was on his job, and he was chanting all the time on his job. He had a job like a warehouse watchman or something, and he was chanting. Special. That's a special case. But the point is that this is one of the unique things of Lord Chaitanya's movement, and that is that it's open to everyone. As much as you want to take, if you can just say Hare Krishna, you've begun. That's a big step, right? You say it one time. We learn the potency of the movement. So that's what I would say to such a person. Take it at your own speed, you know, and the main thing is that they see you as a friend. You know, is that they see that, oh yeah, those devotees are nice. Let me go visit the temple and see, you know. There's a connection there. And gradually you become interested in it, and if you're willing to, you know, undertake some of the processes of like chanting, then there'll be a change of heart. Change of heart. That's the title of one chapter in the Bhagavatam, the change in heart. Balaram, right behind you. He's got a mic.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment in this regard. Because you're mentioning this idea of starting, you know, just to start and then just, you know, to do something and make progress. So, some time ago, Devamrita Swami was visiting Southern California, and he was giving some talks, and I attended one of those talks. And Devamrita Swami is a teacher within the Hare Krishna movement, very prominent leader. So he was saying how he started one thing that he would do. You know, because we have these beads, 108 beads, and we chant, right, Hare Krishna, on each bead, and you do that 108 times, right, 1 round. So bhakti practitioners usually chant about 2 hours a day, 16 rounds. So anyways, Devamrita Swami was saying how he started he wouldn't chant 1 round a day. He would actually chant on 1 bead a day. He would say, and he said was
he chanting the whole mantra on the beat, or just?
He said he was just kind of like relaxing, and he would just chant the whole mantra on 1 beat, Hare Krishna, the whole mantra, and then he would set the beats and say, okay, tomorrow. So, and he increased, and
then after a little while, 2 beats, and then I never heard that one before. That's amazing. But he just another story about Devamrita Swami, since you're talking about him. He eventually he got interested in the books, in reading, but he didn't want to associate with those crazy Hare Krishnas, so he was kind of avoiding the devotees. But he heard about that this Bhagavatam was important. A new volume had come out, because he was in New York. That's where we were working on the volumes, and we'd print, 3rd count or 4th count. So he ended up, and he had seen, because there's a place called the Port Authority Terminal in New York where a lot of bus lines cross. It's very busy, and devotees would go there to distribute books all the time. And he saw them there, and he said, well, if I'm going to get this new book, which I'm interested in, he was real intellectual. He had graduate of Yale, was it, or Dartmouth? Yeah. So he went there, and he met Daivi Shakti. Her name says it all. She possessed this spiritual energy. So she's been in Vrindavan now for many years, and she knows Sanskrit. But at that time, she was just an empowered book distributor, one of the main in Brooklyn at the time. So he asked her about the Bhagavatam, and she said, yes, but it's available at the temple. I don't have that volume here, you know. But she convinced him that, you know, and it's true, they were raising funds to get a new building. We were in Brooklyn on Henry Street, you know, we want to get a building in Manhattan, that's where the action is, you know. And Prabhupada was behind that. So her influence was such that he ended up giving $2,000 back in 1972 or 73, when you can multiply that by at least 7 or 8. So he lived with his father. He went upstairs, got one check, went upstairs, got another check, like that, and then she told him, and Srila Prabhupada is coming in such and such a few weeks, you know. So he came and saw him. He came to see him and heard him speak, and he decided, yes, this is what I want to do. So, and as you say, he's a wonderful, empowered preacher. You know, he's distributing books for many years. He is in charge of a very successful center in New Zealand for many years now, and anyway, all over the world. So, and I remember when you know, he would go out and do books, but his health wasn't that great, and eventually, you know, he had to stop. And then we moved from Brooklyn to L.A. I don't know if you've ever heard of this 17 books in 2-month marathon. This is book production. Now this was said to be, you know, inconceivable. If you'd go to a book publisher, you know, 17 books in 2 months? No, I can do, you know, 2 books in 17 months. That maybe we can manage that. I mean, it's unheard of. But probably there was a backlog. The whole Chaitanya Charitamrita had been translated, and we hadn't been printing it. There was some problem in New York, and we had done, you know, the whole 4th canon in the whole year. Big deal, you know. That was 4 volumes. So anyway, Dravida Swami was in Brooklyn, and he was distributing, but his health was such that he couldn't go out anymore. So as we were getting ready to move, he asked me, who I was part of the press by that time, working as a proofreader and an editor eventually, can you please put my name, you know, and ask if I can also join the press? You know, tell Radha Ballabha, who's the mission, who's in charge. And so I did. And it came out, yes. I finally understood. He's a graduate of Yale. He knows, you know, English very well. I said, okay. So he was able to come with us. He became the main proofreader of the whole marathon, 17 books in 2 months. And I was participating a little bit also. And eventually he took sannyas and he became world preacher. But so we were friends. We still are. And he sometimes visits the United States. You can see him. He comes down here. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I have one other comment.
Okay,
in the very beginning, you said something remarkable, I thought.
What was that?
It was that the first Bhagavad Gita you read was obviously written by an atheist or someone who doesn't believe in God. How is that possible?
I don't know if I said that much, but there were no purports. It was a little, you know, it's like 700 paragraphs. That's not very long, you know. But so so it was the Penguin edition, you know. And there's no way you could read the Bhagavad Gita, of course, you know, even if, without any commentary, and understand what's going on. It was a little bit. It was interesting, but it wasn't something that would change my life. You know, then I put that aside, and then I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and then I read this and that, you know, like that. That was what we were doing at that time. But when I came in touch with Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, it was a world-changing, you know, life-changing event because of his explanations and purity. Did you have something real quick, and then we'll adjourn?
A quick question. Thank you, Dravida Prabhu. Nice talk. My question was about, you mentioned about Prabhupada chanting in the Tompkins Square Park, Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Yeah. Can you share a little bit more, like would he bring prasadam there and how was he chanting and all some details around that event?
Unfortunately, I was 2 years late. I eventually lived 2 blocks from Tompkins Square Park, but it was 68. The devotees were there still on 2nd Avenue. They moved up the street a bit for a little bigger place, and then they moved to Brooklyn. So I would see them chanting in the street, but I wasn't ready for it. I was a street musician. I played the flute, believe it or not. And when I saw Krishna's picture, I said, "That's interesting. God is a flute player. Let me check that out." And so I would, so I would be looking for drummers. And at that time, in the spring and summer, there was always people. So I would go, "Oh, that's a good beat. Chink, 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 da 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 da." And then I was, "That's just the Hare Krishna. There's no way, And so I eventually would go out to the park and I would jam. But Prabhupada, he took the devotees out, and there's video of it. He's playing this half a bongo drum. Bongos are two. So someone had detached it, given him one bongo drum, which he played for 3 hours, from 2 to 5 or something like that. And you see him, he's beating away and chanting, he's absorbed. And there's Chutananda got up and danced. Nobody had any dhotis or anything. Everyone's in karmi clothes, but he's dancing, and Brahmananda chanting. And there's all this big crowd, because it was almost like a tourist attraction. Let's go see the hippies in Tompkins Square Park. And on the west side, in next to NYU, what is it? Oh God, I forget the name of the park, but it's a famous, the one where the Ratha Yatra ends every year. Washington Square Park. Washington Square Park. That was also, he started there. He went over there, but that place, the police were very adamant. They wouldn't, he sat down in the grass, and they said, "Who's in charge here?" So everyone pointed to Prabhupada and said, "Can't you read the sign? No sitting on the grass." Okay, so they moved 10 feet, and sitting on the pavement, and the first chant, So next time he said, "Okay, let's go to Tompkins Square Park. It's much more liberal over there." So he would chant, 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 and then he got up and famously gave an address. He spoke and explained what it is. And that tree that is now a monument. It's a place that the city protects. There's a sign there and everything. This is where the Hare Krishna movement started. And then after chanting, with a little crew that he had already, then other people would follow him back to the storefront where they're going to have prasadam, So that's how he would, But he wasn't really distributing any prasadam there. Yeah, back at the front. Thank you very much for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Now we'll have a short kirtan and prasadam. Haribol.
We have announcements first, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't stand up.